The patrons appeared on Thrish the day after the Titans had all been slain. It's unknown where they came from or why they came here, but it's heavily theorized that they were sent here to fill the gap left by the death of the Titans. No matter what they really are or why they came here, one thing is certain. Patrons have had a massive impact on the history of Thrish and its culture. And now, it's your turn to learn about them. Legend says that when the patrons first arrived, they each looked strange and shapeless, formless, faceless, bipedal creatures with only gray bodies. But as time went on, and as they made decisions about themselves and felt things that impacted their lives, they slowly took the forms that we know them as today, gaining identifying features and eventually taking names for themselves. Mythology implies that when the patrons first arrived, they were speaking runes, and that they had to slowly learn mortal language. This also seems to imply that patrons were the ones that taught mortals how to use rune magic, and how to write and read the language of magic itself, allowing them to do fabulous things with this newfound power. Magical research into the theory of patrons seems to suggest that they would have been made out of a sort of physical mana. Some legends say that specific patrons wove into themselves actual biological material, thus making them more resistant to the effects of magic, but for the most part, we do believe that they were made out of pure, actual magic. Legend says that in times of distress, a patron could call on unknown sources of power to grow, expand, change into a form that was far greater and more feral, almost, in order to do battle with higher powers. This is not specifically unique to patrons, but it is something that makes them extremely powerful in legend and myth. What makes patrons so unique amongst mythical and magical creatures in Thrish is their apparent ability to interact with souls and beings that pertain to souls, suggesting that they could be related to religious entities like Death, who collects souls, or Life, who brings souls. It's unsure how powerful they are in this aspect, though, as it's never been tested. Mythology is practically littered with the stories of patrons battling dragons, Titanborn, various spirits and entities as they were challenged, or as these entities threatened the people that they apparently seem to care about. The rivalries are famous and make up most of the stories. Patrons were also said to be able to access parts of our reality that we weren't aware of, such as the theorized ethereal plane or the like. Parts of our reality tucked and hidden away. Some patrons were said to spend countless amounts of time in there as opposed to the actual physical world. Some patrons are said to only visit there once in a while to receive information. Domains are similar to subplanes in that they are tiny pockets of reality that we can't yet confirm exist, but it's heavily theorized and implied by study and research. In fact, some mortals have been able to make similar things to these domains, these pockets, but it's very much implied that patrons were larger and more easy to control. Innovations are a fun subject to bring up when talking about patrons, because it's unsure how much of these things the patrons actually invented and created, and how much they just learned from other inventors and creators. It's this strange give and take between mortals and patrons in mythology, where sometimes they learned how to make tools and sometimes they figured out how to make them tools themselves and shared it with mortals. The cults of the patrons were generally regarded as cultures or cultivated religion, where followers would subscribe to a patron's philosophy according to the myths and keep to it, and apparently were benefited by the magic of the patron in accordance to their obedience. But again, we don't really have any way to confirm that patrons could give their power to others. What makes patrons so unique in mythology and stories and speculative history is the apparent ability to give their power and their magic to others. This leads to, eventually favoritism of one mortal over all the rest, leading to champions, often bestowed with agelessness and nigh immortality because of their closeness to a patron. There are many legends and stories that center around the idea of patrons having children and the adventures that the children have. Sometimes the children would be direct copies of the patron. Sometimes they would be a mix between both of the patron's parents. Sometimes they would be wildly different and have none of the promised powers of their divine parent. The most famous legend about the patrons is, without a doubt, the Patron War, where the patrons, unable to be killed, were sealed away by massive amounts of magic cast by hundreds of people. This is, we believe, to emphasize the strength of mortals in numbers and the might that these numbers can give when facing these larger threats in our world. Stories about the patrons often vary wildly, depending on who's telling them and what they're trying to teach. This leads to some great differences in some famous legends from how patrons are said that they are supposed to act, or their temperament. This can be traced just to watering down stories or playing them up over time, though. Those who claim to be in contact with patrons modernly or by word of mouth seem to tell them also differently from the actual depictions of the patrons in myth, and attribute this to the fact that the patron's ability to change identity based on defining life circumstances hasn't stopped. They're still changing and they're still evolving into new identities today. And with that, thanks for watching. Special thanks to my cat, who you might have been able to hear purring throughout the course of the video. And I hope to see you all next time. Stay tuned.